Blue Lock Chapter 346 Part 2 just dropped, and it might have just answered or even confirmed the biggest question on everyone's mind right now, which is Blue Lock being too repetitive? Now, I was going to make a video prior to this chapter, however then I decided to wait. And thank God I did, because before I was going to actually defend Blue Lock. I was a little bit too much of a fanboy to see things clearly. I was going to say things like, just because we disagree with the outcome doesn't mean the show is repetitive. Sure, Isagi keeps on winning, but he is the main character at the end of the day. And in regards to Isagi, I was also going to say that sure, he seems to pull something out of his ass at the last moment of every game, but that's in his character. He spends the whole game adapting and then he executes what he took in mind. And this point specifically is something that I will get back to at the end of the video, because as I said, I was a little bit too much of a fanboy to realize that this shit actually has merit. And spoiler alert, Isagi has been doing the same exact thing for 8 consecutive games. However, before we get to that, just know that this chapter shattered everything in my eyes. It quite literally destroyed every argument I had regarding to this question. And in all honesty, I can no longer defend this point of is Blue Lock being too repetitive. And of course, we will need to talk about the chapter here and what happened in it, but I'm not going to go too deep into this chapter or really focus on it. Instead, let's actually explore how this shit right here is the ultimate repetition of something that happened in a game not too long ago. You see, because this same scenario of Isagi tricking Hugo and then the double shot with Rin was actually explored in the Uber's game. And here are the comparison points. Isagi manages to escape the defenders of the opposing team. However, he is then jumped by the main antagonist of that game. Back then it was Lorenzo and now it's Hugo, who both were on different players. Lorenzo of course was on Kaiser and Hugo was on Baru. Then Isagi barely wins through juggling the ball between going left or right, which in the case of Lorenzo was shooting with either leg, and now in the case of Hugo was going in either direction. Then as soon as he does that, a teammate of his with insane ego shows up at the last moment and tries to steal the ball. In the Uber's game it was Kaiser and now it was Ren. However, instead of giving in, Isagi shouts that this is still my ball and they both shoot at the same time. The exact same shit repeated. And here's the crazy part, in the Uber's game, Baru obviously stopped the ball. However, now the next chapter is labeled Destiny, and so you already know that Loki is going to stop the shot. Some people are saying that it's going to be Charles, and I definitely can see that. However, I think Kanshiro completely character assassinated Charles in this game. And I honestly doubt Kanshiro even remembers that Charles has the vision to understand what is going on, and he is actually close by for him to do something. And so with this, in addition to the fact that the next chapter is labeled Destiny, I think it's going to be Loki. However, and speaking of the people who could actually stop the duo, watch Baru and this random defender here disappear next chapter. Since if we look closely, they are in the way of both Rin and Isagi. And so how did they disappear from the last panel? I don't know. Watch them be too far to the left or some bullshit like that. This honestly has been just a disaster. And I'm just hoping the writer just doesn't delete them from the scene next chapter. Because this shit right here is painful as is. We don't really need more plot holes for Isagi and Rin to have their gay moment. However, let's actually address the elephant in the room. Let's address what happened to Hugo in this play. Let's talk about why couldn't Hugo just do what he did in chapter 331. Well, the only argument I could conjure is the fact that he simply forgot. Hugo simply forgot, or I should say this is a total plot hole. Now obviously I've seen a lot of people say that he was a second late, and because of that he couldn't engulf Isagi the way he should be. And I gotta say that's totally bullshit. Hugo is supposed to be the guy who can account for everything, and him placing himself there right behind Baru, even though it would have been better to counter him the same way Charles and Layden did with Shido, he placed himself there specifically because he knew Isagi was coming. He could see Isagi coming from miles away and he put himself in a position where he could react to either Baru or Isagi. And so I am here to ask you, if Hugo is this guy that accounts for everything and he knew Isagi is coming, why the fuck would he not account for Isagi spinning? Why would he give Isagi the space to spin knowing that he could score from a demi volley like that? And so in all honesty, it's just bad writing at this point. Whether you think that he forgot to press him physically, which is an obvious plot hole, or you think that he was a second late, which doesn't make make sense for Hugo's character because he should have accounted for that. At the end of the day, the only conclusion here is that Kanshiro had a brain fart, and so that's the situation we're in. Hugo had to be nerfed in order for Isagi to do his shenanigans here. There is literally no other way around it. And here's the thing. Back when Isagi did this to Lorenzo, it kinda made sense if you think about it. Lorenzo's whole playing style was all about lunging in front of the attacker and not allowing them to escape with his insane dueling ability. And so Isagi utilized that specifically to counter him. By juggling the ball mid-air and then shooting, Lorenzo has no way of actually stopping Isagi. However, this is not the case at all with Hugo here. As I just explained, there is no way for this to actually be without nerfing Hugo completely, without completely character assassinating the guy. And honestly, this makes me sad to no end. I know Kanshiro is better than this writing. I've seen him write some of the most insane shit and he still made it make sense. However, this right here is just sad to see, man. It's honestly just bad writing no matter how I try to think about it. And as you might have just noticed, this is the second time I mention character assassination. First with Charles of course, and now with Hugo. However, this game is actually plagued with character assassinations. Obviously the two I just spoke of, but think about it, the reason the community is so negative about Loki right now is because he was shown to be mid throughout the game. The guy got stopped by Nico, he got stopped by Karasu multiple times, he got dunked on by Kunigami, he literally was getting his ass handed to him left and right. And the goal that he scored, even though very impressive, it was not enough for us as fans to actually get satisfied with Loki, especially after the legendary performance he pulled off at the PXG game. But Loki, Charles and Hugo are not the only ones, because even on the side of Blue Lock we have many character assassinations. And I'm not talking about Otoya and Aiku who only had one showing, because I feel like who even cares, we still have time for them to actually shine. However, the two guys I'm talking about are actually Karasu and Shido, and they got their character assassinations in different ways. Karasu was actually great, much like Hugo, until the last moment where Isagi made him look like a complete idiot. However, with Shido, I think it's more similar to Charles and Loki, where it's obviously not Isagi's fault, but rather Kanshiro just forgot about him. Shido was hyped up to be the guy that is able to break the France system, only for him to do it once, get devoured by Baro, and then disappear into nothingness. And instead of actually exploring this in this video, I actually decided to drop a following video after a few days exploring this concept specifically, exploring how 5 of the most intriguing players in the show got their character completely assassinated by the writer in this one singular game. But going back to Hugo, even if we accept the idea of him actually forgetting or being a second late or whatever you want to believe, the question I find myself asking is, who the hell does this benefit? I mean, Isagi did not improve or anything, he did not adapt, and nothing really came from him realizing that he is a rebel. Instead, he used the same trick that he used in the previous game, which did not work against Hugo before, and now it worked after the writer nerfed Hugo. So yeah, and with Rin interfering and Loki stopping the shot, Isagi really did not benefit from this at all. And because of this blunder, Hugo lost so much aura for no reason. He went from the most intriguing antagonist to someone who just lost to Isagi at the final moment. And what's really infuriating about this is that not only was Hugo an amazing antagonist, he also was a perfect talented learner. And that was one of his biggest selling points. He was rivaling Loki and he is on top of the world while being a talented learner. That was so intriguing for us as fans and it really made him special. The guy had his own philosophy that for the first time put Ego's philosophy himself to shame. And for all of that to be shattered just so Isagi can tell him bow down to my luck is just painful, man. And by the way, had Ego chose to go left, would Isagi then tell him bow down to my luck? That was a 50-50 chance and Isagi acted as if it was a guaranteed win. And also, even if it is a win, the guy lost 8 times to Hugo and won once, and yet he is trash talking. And so for the perfect antagonist to lose so much aura for no reason really, other than give one win to Isagi that he honestly does not even need, is just sad to me, man. Like, did we really need Isagi to win at the last moment here? I think he should have just lost and built himself back in the England game. Why are we acting as if if Isagi lost here, it would have been the end of Blue Lock. One simple loss doesn't really define the Demon King. I mean, he lost twice to Rin, but his win against him in the U20 game was actually so sweet because he won in the same fashion that he lost to before. And also, before anyone said that this might be a win for Loki who would stop the shot, do I have to remind you that he was set out to prove to Isagi that he isn't just fast, and that he is far beyond what his legs present. However, by just showing up at the last moment due to his speed, he is kinda proving Isagi right, and so Loki is also not a winner of this situation. And so who exactly won? Rin is a hyena, Hugo lost so much aura, Isagi gambled and then lost to Loki, and Loki just proved everyone right that he is just fast. And so who exactly won right here? I honestly can't fathom why Kanshiro took this route. Well, that actually was before I've seen a video from Hugo where he kinda gave an explanation to this. And shout out to my guy here, by the way, because his theory kinda makes all of this a little bit plausible. You see, sure, Hugo lost so much aura in this one play. However, this loss could actually allow him to perfect his own theory. Obviously, we've all loved his way of thinking and his suitable destiny theory, but we kinda could tell that it is a little bit flawed here and there, especially in regards to luck, which, much like Ego said, it is a constant thing about the universe and you need to account for it. And so him losing to Isagi this way might teach him to account for luck as well, which means once we meet him again in the finals, he would be a much more formidable player. And honestly, if that's the case, I can swallow this. I could put a little bit of honey over it and swallow it. And so big shout out to Hugo with this theory, because it honestly made all of this just a little bit acceptable. However, this does not fix everything, because there is another problem that Kanshiro put himself in, and I honestly think this is so severe that if he doesn't address it quickly, it might end up killing the show. And I know I just scared you guys here, but what the hell am I talking about? Well, you see, by having Hugo's character be assassinated like this, how would Kanshiro actually be able to build hype for any other upcoming character or an antagonist? I mean, if the antagonist who had the perfect theory, who was a talented learner, who was the direct counter of Ego and Isagi, and the one we will be seeing in the finals gets destroyed at the final moment of the game by Isagi like any other antagonist, how would Kanshiro convince any of us guys that any player holds any merit of hype? I mean, if every antagonist we are going to have is just going to get beaten by Isagi at the end of the game, then what's the fucking point? Where is the hype? Where is the good writing that we are used to? And why did the writer put himself in this shithole to begin with? Well, I actually have the perfect explanation, which is that Kanshiro is Isagi's biggest meat rider, but hey, it's his own show and he could meat ride anyone he likes. However, I gotta say that for us fans, he is kinda killing the hype behind Blue Lock. I mean, this was the only game realistically where Blue Lock could easily lose, and because of that, it was the game to build hype for the world stage and the U20 World Cups. However, by having Karasu awaken like that and present a powerful way to score against France multiple times and even rival Hugo in his thinking, and then by having Isagi do his usual ass pulls at the end of the game, I don't know, the writer is kinda killing the stakes for this arc. I mean, as I just said, if this is the only game where Blue Lock could realistically lose, and they performed this well and almost leveled the score, then why the fuck would we even care about England? Even if they have a new Gen 11, and even if he is as interesting as Hugo or Kaiser, at the end of the day, we know that Isagi is going to have an ass pull at the end of the game, and he is going to win regardless of anything. I'm even scared for the face-off against Bunny. Sure, Bunny right now still has his hype due to his relationship with Sai, Isagi, and possibly Rin, but here's a spoiler alert. Bunny will dominate throughout the game, then Isagi awaken at the last moment and beat him. That's the roadmap for literally every game ever since the third selection. And this is the point that I said I need to get back to later. You see, ever since the second selection, Isagi officially participated in only 8 games. And guess what, guys? With the exception of 2 games, Isagi has always been the underdog at the beginning of the match, only for him to adapt and beat the main antagonist at the end of that game. Then it fucking happened again with France and Hugo right here. And even though Isagi might not score here, at the end of the day he had an adaptation at the end of the game and he was able to do something against the main antagonist. Which means Blue Lock is not just repetitive, it is literally copy-pasting the same formula, albeit the writer is changing the weapon every time. And you would expect the two games that I excluded to be actually different, but Isagi still scored the last goals. And here's the reason I excluded them. You see, both the Ubers and the PXG games started with Isagi actually dominating. They both did not use the same template. Sure, Isagi scored, but he was not a bum throughout the game, only to awaken at the last moment. And I don't know about you guys, but to me this signals lazy writing. And as you can tell from the tone of this video, I am doing the unthinkable and I am trashing Kanshiro, which I usually don't do because I love this show so much. However, shit really hit the fan with me here. Hugo was just perfection for him to be handled the way he did, and for him to be reduced to being just another antagonist Isagi faced and eventually defeated in the same game is just sad and really bad writing. And here's the thing, even if you are an Isagi fan, I'm not saying that he should not improve or that he should not do something crazy throughout the game. In fact, it's actually the exact opposite. The two games I mentioned, Ubers and PXG, are one of my favorites specifically because Isagi was actually competent throughout. And so why not have more games like this? Why not have Isagi score at the beginning, for example? In the Nigerian game, why not have Isagi score at the beginning and then Blue Lock continue to dominate from there? I don't know, I feel like the writer is taking the easy way out every time, and honestly I don't like it at all. And as I said, for all the Isagi lovers, I'm not saying that Isagi should not improve or adapt, I'm just saying it doesn't need to happen at the end of every fucking game. Or I hope everyone understands, even if you love Isagi a lot, it doesn't mean that he needs to win every time. As I said, he lost twice to Rin, but he came back so much better because of that. And so I honestly wish he did not awaken in this game, but rather he rebuilt himself in the England game. I feel like Kanshiro should really start to present variations in order for this show to really continue with the hype it is presenting. Otherwise, a lot of people are losing interest and a lot of people might drop it. However, to end the video, I gotta say something regarding the French game. As I said, it suffered from the fact that there were a lot of character assassinations in it. And I feel like one of the main reasons for that was the fact that it was very rushed. Now I understand games in the group stage don't really matter, but this game should have been the exception. It is against France, for God's sake. It is against the strongest team and the one voted most likely to win the World Cups. And so maybe just add in one extra volume by shedding light on Loki, his relationship with Charles, on Shido and Otoya and their relationship with Karasu would have really benefited this game, and maybe would have made Isagi's awakening at the end far more plausible. However, the way it is, I don't know, the game is just a total mess and almost everyone suffered because of it. And it's double infuriating because it's supposed to be the game that sets the tone for the entire World Cups. However, unfortunately, Kanshiro ended up dropping the ball completely with this one. But enough ranting for me for one day. That's all I've got for you today, guys. I really hope you enjoyed the video, or maybe not, I don't know. But until next time, thank you for watching.